is talk about some practical advice. I actually think this panel is probably one of the more important panels because it has to do with institutionalizing innovation. I think, Aaron, it was great that you set us up so beautifully for this yesterday. I love the analogy of the seeds. I see this, there's lots of seeds that are sprinkled, but it's really about the soil. And what I want to talk about today is the soil and how you put together a culture that really embraces innovation and institutionalizes that so that no matter what, that still continues to happen, even with some of the great things that you talked about from the ground up as well. So what I want to do is actually have all of you talk a little bit about what you're currently doing there, and then I'll ask you a few more questions. We're going to open it up for the audience. So let's start with our host. Let's start with Theresa.
Okay, thank you. Well, you heard the mayor talk about it yesterday, right? Their innovation, improvement, it's everyone's job. Here in Louisville, when we talk about the job, we think about it in terms of daily work, continuous improvement, and breakthrough or innovation work. But we also think that there are a lot of things that you can do to create the environment and the culture in which you can help others find a way to innovate, find the way to improve, and make that just part of the fabric of the community. And so we try to do that here, both internal to city government as well as external with our community partners. And when Mayor Fisher first came into office, he very quickly created a role for a civic innovator. And many of you know him as Ted Smith. He's been with Mayor Fisher since the beginning. And the role that Ted has been playing within our community is to really work with the business community, with social entrepreneurs, with nonprofits, with foundations, with philanthropists, to figure out a way to create social good, whether it's product, services, that other organizations or individuals can be delivering to citizens that will take some of the burden, some of the responsibility, some of the weight off of government, because government can't do it all by itself. And so to really try and create an environment where we're inviting in those community partners to help create things like air monitoring and air quality controls and sensors that will help us figure out where our air quality is best and worst across the city, and then ways that we can work to improve it. And making that not just the job of Air Pollution Control District, but the job of our foundations, our philanthropists, as well as our citizen scientists, right, and our youth within the community. And so I think that's a really important role that we see here is how do you spur civic innovation outward with our community partners? And then how do you also create an environment within city government where every employee feels like they are empowered and capable of identifying improvements and innovations and also surfacing those improvements and innovations? And we've done a lot through our work with the innovation team, with Bloomberg Philanthropies, to work with departments and with employees to focus on 5 really large-scale issues and challenges that our community identified when Mayor Fisher first came into office. And those were things like trying to increase our live release rate of animals and making sure that we're not euthanizing animals within our shelters, working to increase recycling across the community, working to triage non-emergent calls out of our 911 system. Really great breakthrough innovations that our departments and our employees in city government were able to capitalize on because of the help and the structure that the Bloomberg Innovation Team brought to city government. And we also created the Office of Performance Improvement, which is the office that I oversee and came in 3 years ago to help establish. And that is really about trying to set up the processes and the systems and the capabilities within city government for all employees to identify and surface and then execute on improvements and innovations. And we, say that there's sort of this gray line. We're trying to figure out what is improvement versus innovation, and do you even need to define it? Some folks see innovation as anything that is new. If you are doing something for the first time, that can be innovative to you. Others see it as something that is truly a step change or a new delivery of a service that is meeting a need that was there or that maybe folks didn't even know was there. And so, we're trying to identify it for ourselves just so that we understand that, it's not that performance improvement office can't do innovative things or that employees can't do innovative things and they have to wait for the I team, but really that can just meld together and that anybody can surface those. And so we've tried to create that environment and system within city government and within the community, and I think we've been doing a really great job thus far.
Okay, great. Adele, I'm actually going to come to you next. So What's happening in Philadelphia? You also have a very dynamic mayor who's got a great agenda. So what's happening there?
So mayors have a great way of attracting great talent around them. They don't do so well describing what a typical day-to-day like is going to be for that talent. So we all find that we all come in with a perception of we think our job is going to be really focusing on this great stuff called innovation. But then you realize that in order for you to really have the credibility to advance an innovation agenda, you really need to get the railroad running on time. And that's very important. There's a lot of very old, basic processes that run government day in, day out. And you really have to get that stuff working well before you earn the right and earn the credibility to run an innovation agenda. So that it's something that I realized day one on August 19, 2011. And I realized that I really sort of needed to get the technology, just basic day-to-day technology in the city working well. I'm not sure that we're there, but we're in a lot better place than where we used to be. So we flattened out the organization. We focused on business transformation, helping agencies help themselves and deliver services better to their constituents. We've developed some very basic architectural principles, going out to the cloud first, mobile first strategy, figuring out every place where we could have social, mobile, and cloud intersect. Created some very critical roles that were going to sort of spearhead some of the innovation agenda. And took almost every dollar that we saved from optimizing the back office operation to support some public-facing initiatives. Back 3 years ago, we really only had 2 individuals that I ran into who were focused on anything that was sort of externally focused. And today we've got a very healthy group of about 23 individuals supporting things anywhere from an innovation academy to an innovation lab to an open data program, civic technology, a very robust analytics driven by GIS. So all of those things really came about as a result of looking for opportunities internally to optimize your operation, save dollars, agreement with your budget folks that those savings, instead of having them flow back to the general fund, they should really be seen as investments in the innovation agenda. And then making sure that every process and every procedure that you take on is aligned with supporting an innovation culture. So today, because of Mayor Nutter's sort of executive leadership, hires great people, but then moves out of their way so that they can get the job done, we're very proud of many of the things that are happening in Philadelphia. But more importantly, it's not just one person, one organization, or one role. In fact, I think Philadelphia is represented very well today. We've got Maya, who oversees policy, and Story, who's the co-director for the urban mechanics. By the way, I think now the mayor is the other co-director, so that's what a great partner to have. And that, I mean, we're all implementing his vision. He somehow saw something that many of us were struggling to see many years ago, and it's coming together. All these different roles are gelling in a very productive way. And at the end of the day, who really benefits are just the average day-to-day citizen who either can receive services in a different way, interact with their government in a much more meaningful way. So kudos to him. I think all the credit goes to him.
All right, well, thank you. So Lynda, let's go south a little bit and talk about what's happening in Fort Worth.
Okay. This is okay.
Yeah, what's on?
Okay. At the City of Fort Worth, we've had the Performance Office in place now for 18 months. And the reason it was formed was to look at employees and improve their performance, but also the operation performance. So yesterday, there was a discussion about the 20, 60, 20 employees. And so within most cities, of course, your 20% of your employees are already out there doing innovative things. So it was really, our focus has been on those 60% of employees. How do we get them involved in continuous improvement? And like you've heard, that our focus is everyone's job is continuous improvement, and everyone should be leading that effort. So it was really looking at the organization and putting in place some methodologies and structures for them to really maximize their potential. So we looked at, of course, we put Lean in place to give them some tools so that they can begin to, how do I look at my processes? We also aligned everything. We looked at our performance evaluation system with employees. Is that aligned? We looked at our mission, vision, values. Are they focused on the right things so that as an organization, when we're saying, let's go out and make improvements, are we focused in improving the right things? We looked at our measurement system. There's a lot of things, I guess, that we had to bring together to make that alignment. We also looked at our supervisors' roles. As you look in your organization, there's your supervisors are that key group that sometimes block that innovation from occurring within your organization. Do they understand their role? Or are they allowing that to happen? So we spent a lot of time training our supervisors in their role in this whole process so that we're having that grassroots stuff that needs to occur. Is it happening?
Okay, good. So from a state perspective, if you can add to the discussion what's happening in Washington.
In Washington State. So just a little bit of context setting for Washington State. I don't know how many people are familiar with Washington State in the northwest section of the United States.
Yes, it's probably a lot warmer there.
Yeah,
right now.
it's a lot warmer there. Today was so cold when I came out of the hotel. So we have about 7 million Washingtonians in Washington currently. Our state budget is about $65 billion. That includes both the federal and the state components of that. We have approximately 109 agencies in our executive cabinet, and some of those are separately elected, but typical agencies like Department of Agriculture, Labor and Industries, Department of Commerce, Department of Health. And then we have approximately 109,000 employees if you consider our higher ed system. And so a robust system within Washington State. Any Super Bowl football fans out there? Yeah. So
Were you trying to find who was rooting for the Seahawks out there?
so let me just be clear. Who was rooting for the Seahawks?
There you go. That's what she wants to know.
So, won the Super Bowl last year, and we lost the Super Bowl this year by that much.
Yes.
We have a beast. We could have given him Skittles and pushed him over the line, but okay. So anyway, in Washington State, we've been trying some innovative things. I've been fortunate to be part of 2 governors' administrations. I was recruited for Governor Gregoire's administration in the last 2.5 years, and then transitioned most recently to Governor Inslee's administration in 2013. And so having the opportunity to sort of see what worked in one administration and how we can transition that and build on that during the second administration. So wanted to share some, I would call them seeds, just to align with sort of the soil mentality of what we're doing in Washington State to really cultivate that culture around improvement and lean thinking. So the first piece I would mention is we're really trying to foster and support the tension around structure and experimentation. And so when we started the program with Governor Inslee, again, looking at what worked, we went with something simple called Results Washington, which we thought it would be hard for the next governor to get rid of Results Washington, perhaps, with a name, because it's very basic and very simple. And we set up a framework where we had a strategic framework focusing on one vision, one mission for the entire state system, as well as 5 priority goals. So goals around education, prosperous economy, environment, health and safe communities, and then efficient, effective, and accountable government. Within that system, that framework, we created goal councils. And so 53 directors from each of those different agencies, the predominant ones, participated in that process where we not only created the strategic framework, but we said, where are we going to take each of these goal areas in terms of moving them forward? And what do citizens care most about that government does? And so from the goal council session, we broke all the directors up into those five areas, and they became really champions of that work. One thing that was really appreciative about doing that was we had people who, I don't know if you've heard state government's really good about working in silos. Has anybody heard that before?
Yes. Yeah.
So we brought people to the table in education, and we looked at the value stream from, birth, early learning, the K-12 system, which is separately elected in our state, as well as the community college, the higher ed system, and then workforce training. And so those people sit around the table on a regular basis and have conversations about where are we taking this in terms of goals, objectives, outcomes, and measures. And so that group was formed for each of those five areas, and they are responsible for measure maps, where we look at outcome measures, leading indicators, and a real intense focus on what are the strategies that we want to employ related to this. We've done a lot of performance management work in Washington State. It's been years and years of good, solid work in performance management. We wanted to focus more on strategies and cross-agency strategies so that we could have conversations about how those tie in together from a citizen perspective. So we built these measure maps. Everything is on our website, by the way, if anyone wants to look at that. And we used a system, Socrata, who is here today as a vendor, and we were an early adopter with that system and tried to plug everything into that system for our conversations. Our goal councils meet once a month. We have results reviews with our governor once a month as well, and we tee up the conversation with the governor around specific areas that we consider off track. We try to focus on the off track pieces and then have the conversations about what are the strategies in moving forward. So we're really trying to create a culture that's not about the data per se, or are you red, green, or yellow, but what are we doing, collectively with our partners in this area to help move this work forward. All of that work was shared early with the citizens. We asked for feedback on town halls, Twitters. We used crowdsourcing tools. Is this the right way to measure the things that we think are important? We got great feedback from the medical community. C-section rates is one of our measures. We were measuring it wrong according to their perspective. And so recognizing they're the experts, let's make the measure work and align with the community. So that was a key part of the work we're doing. That structure has really been fundamental to allowing then people to innovate and experiment with that. We've been really clear about let's be careful of creating too many standards or too much structure. We want enough structure for foundational pieces, but let's make sure that we don't over-structure it, create sort of a bureaucracy, and then we've lost that innovative experimentation mentality. So that's been a really key part of what we do. The other piece I would mention is the blending of the disciplines around performance management and project management. We were doing well in those areas. We added the elements of change management and lean management to the agenda, and really thinking about what that can do for the work around performance and management. And for those of you who aren't as familiar with lean management, some people think of lean as tools and projects. Our vision of lean is it's the cultural component. It's lean thinking. It's how do we help our employees problem solve. We know they have the answers. They work with the customers. And so it becomes leader as coach, employee as problem solver. We've got the focus is value added as defined by the customer. And in Washington State, the customer is the Washingtonian. So having that always at the forefront of the conversations. We also invite the customers into our results reviews with the governor, as well as the Go Council sessions. So if we're talking about education, we'll bring in students. Or if we're talking about business, we'll bring in a small business owner. We want to keep it very real, and this is the work that we're all doing. And so making sure that our culture recognizes customer voice, leader as coach, employee as problem solver, and then we're trying to rid waste within the system in a variety of ways. The other piece I would mention is we've also looked at sort of a top-down, bottom-up, and side-to-side approach with this. And so I know a lot of people think of it as an either-or, and you can see in the themes that I have here, it's sort of borrowing from Genius of the And. It's sort of Collins and Moore's work. And that we're looking at top-down, bottom-up, and side-to-side because we know that that's how we get through the entire piece. I know Lynda mentioned the middle piece, and that's probably the most challenging piece today is that middle management. We call that sort of the frozen middle at this point, but we're moving in that direction from a variety of ways. Top down, I would say, is the results, it's the strategy, it's how do we apply lean to the most strategic pieces of work that we can do within state government. Bottom up is model areas, having employees huddle. Chris Liu is sitting out here as a director of our enterprise services, and he's got people doing huddles in all areas of his building, which is really fabulous. And then side to side is really that cross-agency piece, again, where we're saying it's not okay to just be thinking of what the Department of Health does. It's how do you work with the K-12 system with some of these strategies? And how are you working with Healthcare Authority? And really spreading that across the goal councils and looking at strategies that align internally, and then bringing our partners in and saying, we have common goals. How do we work together with limited resources to make sure we're addressing those things that are most important? And the last piece I would just mention is, as I mentioned, the partnership piece. Couldn't do it without the partners. We made a conscious choice when we started this work that we could be a culture that was narrowly focused on sort of back office things or things we could control, or we could take a bolder approach and look at things that are important to Washingtonians, recognizing we need partnerships to do that. And so an extensive effort to work with partners, work with superintendents and principals, healthcare professionals, environmentalists, to say, how can we collectively work on this together? So those are some key pieces that we've employed.
Great, thank you. And there's even a sponsor shout out in that, so there you go. So I have a question actually for you, Adel and Theresa, on technology. It's interesting, many years ago we came out with a keynote in the Center for Digital Government that was talking about the role of the Chief Information Officer, where we spend a lot of time in that area, and the Chief Innovation Officer, Chief Performance Officers, Chief Data Officers, and what was going to happen. Is technology going to be back office? Is it going to be kind of the boring infrastructure, making sure this all runs, and then these other titles are going to do some of the more interesting work? That's something that we've thought a lot about over the last few years. Now, when I first met you, you were the Chief Information Officer of New Jersey, so you've kind of gone the opposite. You were pretty stifled there. Now you're in an environment where you're not. And you took over technology as part of your portfolio. Just want to talk just briefly on technology in the mix of innovation and performance, and again, how does that work in an environment? Because sometimes I see there's tension there.
So I think in the state of New Jersey, had a great time in the state of New Jersey, by the way, but the focus there, the conversation in the state of New Jersey, especially at cabinet meetings, really kind of forced the CIO to be more into cost cutting, play an enforcement role, play the adult around the table for technology projects. So it did in many ways stifle any opportunities to take risk and innovate. What I found a little different in Philadelphia is that, yes, there's still a need to deliver the best service to the citizens at the least cost possible, but that doesn't trump at least having a conversation about what we could do differently. How do we engage internally and externally as well? There are a lot of chief innovation officers out there, and I think, but they all fall in one of two categories. There's a category where they are seen as an operator, somebody who operates from the front office. Best way to describe them is they're a champion without a portfolio. They're very influential as far as advancing the agenda, but may find that they may not have all the resources it takes to at least advance a couple of ideas and get the credibility of their office moving. At the same time, there are chief innovation officers who also oversee the traditional technology portfolio, and those, I believe, have the greatest opportunity to really make all the improvements they can in the back office so that they can pump all of those savings into moving an innovation agenda forward. A lot of folks move in and find that their comfort zone is sort of optimizing inside the data center and making sure everything is running smoothly. And they miss opportunities to take advantage of either going to the cloud or having a different sourcing strategy so they can augment their staffing. And when they miss those opportunities, unfortunately, over time, they become known more of chief infrastructure officers as opposed to perhaps more of an outward-focused agenda. We were lucky in that everybody embraced, I think, a cloud-first strategy. So we pushed a large amount of our footprint, at least 30%, out in the cloud. That freed up a tremendous amount of resources, both human and capital, internally, so that we can create new positions for new roles. And I think if we didn't have the executive sponsorship that is willing to allow us to pursue some of those initiatives, I think we would have just been relegated to maintaining a back office and never taking the IT organization from the back office to be more public facing.
Great, that's perfect. Theresa?
Yeah, so when we started the work with the Office of Performance Improvement, it really does, as Wendy said, touches all areas of government. So we started with, focusing on strategic planning and what is it that we were trying to accomplish and do, and working with all 24 agencies and departments that we have across city government. And once we answered the question of what were we trying to do, we had to go into, well, how well are we doing at it? And that really fell into our performance management system, or our Louis Stat program. And again, working with, now we have all 24 departments onboarded in some way, shape, or form to that program. How can we help them improve? How can we access their data and their information? And then coming out of that, when we identify areas where there's opportunity for improvement or innovation, how do we help them articulate and execute on those areas through continuous improvement and capability building projects? And we do Lean, and we do Six Sigma, and we do project management, and we have the innovation playbook, and there's a lot of different methodologies that we use. But we kept finding, as everyone I think who plays in this space does, is that so much of our efforts dealt with people, and they dealt with the technology. And those were the things that could either make or break any project that we had. The people pieces, and it's interesting because both now HR and IT and the Office of Performance Improvement sort of report up through my title, which is Chief of Performance and Technology. And I look at it as the people, processes, and technology needed to help government improve are all under one umbrella, and we're trying to have them be more connected and aligned. And so the people pieces and the HR pieces are obviously critical. And folks touched on the performance management system and the review system, and we're looking at that. And when you think about the technology side, just as Adel said, we really need to be thinking of technology not only as a back office support function, but also as a citizen-facing organization that is helping us better connect with the community and better deliver online services, access to government, access to others, makes folks feel more connected. And technology, I think more so than anything within our capability level, can help us do that. And we've got a phenomenal team. You recognized our IT team previously. They've run the digital award multiple years in a row and been in the top 3 or 4 multiple years as well. And we've got a fantastic staff, and I've got a great new director of IT, Jason Ballard, who is helping to lead that organization. But from a chief technology role, we're trying to make sure that, or I'm trying to make sure that all of the things that we're trying to do to support our community, whether it's in the innovation space or in the performance space, or just in the connectedness pieces of connecting folks who might have been more disenfranchised within our community to the work of city government, that's the role that we're trying to push technology to play. And I think it also helps with talent attraction, because a lot of folks in the IT space, I think they don't want to only manage the network architecture or the phones or the computers, but they want to be doing these things that the private sector is playing with. And so why isn't government also taking advantage of that? And we are in many of the cities that you're hearing from today.
Great, so good advice. So keep that together. You're probably going to be better off. All right, one last question for you before I open it up to the audience. So let's start. Lynda, I'm about practical advice. I love to sit out there as well, and I like to come back with those things where I go, now that's a good idea. I'm going to go back and do that. What's a practical tip? What's one thing? We have people from all over the country here, from city, county, and state. What would you recommend that they go back and do? And is there anything that you read that helps you in this space?
to go back and do. One of the probably main things to do is whatever you do, number one, keep it simple. Take time. You got to take time. I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we all have to putting innovation in our city, and is taking the time. Most people say we're too busy to take the time to, to take some training, to learn lean, or to pull teams together to look at some of our processes to decide how to be innovative. So you really have to make that commitment. So some organizations may, do you do no meeting Friday, where you take that time where you get your teams together and really do some brainstorming and think about where do we need to be improving. So that's an option, is make the time so that you are being innovative.
All right, keep it simple, make the time. I love that no meeting Friday idea. I think I'm going to implement that. I like that. Wendy, what one thing that they should do, and is there anything that you read, because you brought up actually some things in your comments about what you read, and what should they go back with?
Oh, goodness. Picking one thing is challenging.
Or one or two things.
Okay, great. So I would start with setting a foundation to build on. So something doesn't have to be complex, but something simple that people can really build innovation and experimentation from. And so having that grounding structure has been really helpful for us to be able to take things from there and play with, experiment. And that would be the other piece I would mention would be experimentation. In our culture, it's really challenging to take risks sometimes because a lot of eyes are watching us. It's just common in state government. And so once we use the word experimentation, it sort of lessens that nervousness about the work that we have to do. One example with that is we were asked by the legislature to quantify our savings in lean. For those of you who are involved in lean, you know lean is more than cost savings. It's cost avoidance, there's quality, there's ridding waste, there's customer satisfaction, there's all these important things. And so we were really daunted by this. You want us to be really specific about just the cost savings component, which we know will have challenges with an employee perspective. But by using that experimentation approach, we're going to try something, we're going to see what works. We may fail. If we fail, let's fail fast and keep moving. And going from that perspective has been really helpful, I think, from a culture perspective of trying different things.
All right, Theresa.
So I would reiterate, both of what Lynda and Wendy said. I think there is this idea of recognizing, one, that it's everyone's job, right? So we've said that quite a bit, that you need a foundation and a methodology, and whatever it is, make it simple, but make it pervasive so that it becomes the way that you do your work across city government, and it's not just the work of public works, but it's actually the framework that the entire government uses. The ideal of the lean startup mentality, the fail fast. So get in there, try something, and it's okay if you fail. And I think that Mayor Fisher and the rest of the leadership in Louisville has done a fantastic job of allowing departments to come and be very open with their weaknesses and to fail fast, right? And to say that if the data is not perfect right now, or if the metric doesn't look great, that we're not faulting you for that right now, but we want to work with you to figure out how can we improve it. We want to give you resources. And so I think the biggest thing, if I was to give you one takeaway, would be to look for partners in unlikely places where you might not expect to find partners. And we'll recognize one of our fantastic partners later today, which is Toyota, who has a service support center that has come in and done pro bono work with Louisville Metro government. But the last 2 years, we've recognized other partners like that within the community. Humana has been a phenomenal partner for the Office of Performance Improvement and for Louisville Metro government, providing pro bono training and support in Lean and Six Sigma for our employees, coaching along the way. We mentioned GE yesterday, what they've done to support the maker community within Louisville. It's been a mutually beneficial partnership for GE and for that maker community. I mean, how many people want a fridge that tells you when your milk or beer is running out and you need to pick it up, right, automatically? But I think looking for those partnerships, whether it's foundations, it's philanthropies, or it's the private sector, they're willing to come to the table and help government, and I think we need to be willing to ask.
Yeah, that's great. So reach out to your partners, and they might bring a lot of advice back to you. Great.
And find time to read government technology magazines.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. We like that. That's all? I like that. That's right. It's all in the pages of Government Technology and Governing. Just read those and life will be great. Okay, I want to open it up for questions from the audience. This great group that we have up here this morning. And say who you are, please.
Good morning. My name is Fariba Timaji. I work for Theresa Reno-Weber, Office of Performance Improvement. My question is for Wendy. If you can share your insight about lean thinking, how we can parallel lean thinking and tools to have a step change, both in doing improvement as well as embedding the culture of lean all across.
All right. Lean thinking.
So lean thinking, I heard within the culture and all across. Is that about right? Okay. So yeah, when we looked at the work we're doing with lean, and this can go back somewhat to the top-down, bottom-up, and side-to-side comment I made earlier, we knew it was important from a leadership perspective to endorse this work that we were doing. And so we experimented by bringing in private sector folks to talk about their experience in lean. So in Seattle, we have the fortune of having people like Boeing, Alaska Airlines, Starbucks, who can talk to us about the work that they're doing. And just a note, based on what Theresa was saying, we have a private sector partnership also where her comment about going out and asking is fabulous, because we started with 2 pro bono consultants to help us on our journey, and today we have over 200 individuals with 179 organizations who are providing pro bono service for this work around lean. So we didn't have a lot of money to do this. We offered a conference in October. It's our 3rd annual conference. We had 2,700 employees sign up with a 500 waiting list. So we got to figure out a bigger venue for it. 65 breakout sessions, all from private sector partnerships, pro bono sponsorships for that. So just a nod to, I think what her point was really well taken, is we just need to be asking for help. So going back to the pieces around the lean components within it, started out by asking questions about how would this work for state government, and had some real intense conversations with leadership. We focused with the willing and able leadership early, and started looking at how can we move this across the organization. From a grassroots perspective, we encourage people to look at model areas. Pick an area, one area in your organization that you think you've got some willingness, some ability to make this work. And once that area started moving forward, people were able to share it, employee to employee. And it didn't have to be me talking about how great this work could be for us from that perspective. It was employees talking about how it was working for them. Now, we asked them to be candid. I know Chris, for example, has a supervisor in his area that did some work and has his employees doing huddles. And when he came to talk to the governor, we had a practice session, and his practice session was all glowing about lean. He was just like, oh, it's the best thing. It works great for me, da-da-da-da. And so I asked him, I said, is that how you always felt about this? I mean, did you just start going, yeah, I love this from day one? And his comment was, no, I hated it. I was frustrated that we were doing it, and I feel like my role as a supervisor is now was confusing, and I had to find my way through that. And I'm like, that's what the governor needs to hear. That's what you need to share, is that real perspective about it. So we use the model area approach from a bottom-up perspective. DES again came up with a great slogan about keep calm and fix what bugs you. And so that's, one of the things that we promote throughout for employees to be able to say, fix what bugs you in your day-to-day work. We've also gotten in that middle area some projects that have been specific. We've had about over 600 projects within state government to date around that work. One of the areas, though, that we weren't doing so well in was the highest strategic focus. And so we started a Lean Fellowship program. We're in our 2nd year. It's people from different agencies that interview, apply for this, and they're selected to work in the governor's office for a year on strategic lean projects. And one example I can give you is graduation rates.
And so working with that goal council around the graduation rates pieces. A second one is shellfish beds. We have these shellfish beds in Washington State. It's an economic issue. It's an environmental issue, a water quality issue, healthy, eating shellfish kind of issue. And we had a lot of agencies working on that in different siloed functions. And so the Lean Fellow took 9 agencies and did some problem solving, looking at root cause analysis, and identifying 4 strategies that they would agree to align to. And so now you have 9 agencies working together on 4 strategies. They've gone out to the county area. We disaggregated the data and found that Samish in Washington State was an area where we're seeing more problems than not. And so they've reached out, and now they're working with the county to talk about how do we make this better in terms of shellfish safety and water quality. So those are some examples of the lean work that we've done. And again, I think of it across all of the state government perspective. We started with willing and able, and then at some point, the willing and able and the not willing and able said, is this where we're headed? So we had to do some executive orders around specifically what we mean by this and the commitment to this. And Governor Inslee is very committed to this work. We see it happening all across Washington State in various areas, and so we're just really trying to move that forward. So is that answering the question?
There you go. Yeah, that's exciting. I think there's a question back here.
Good morning. My name is Todd Q. Adams of Visibility Marketing in Cleveland, Ohio. A great panel. My question is around cross-sector or cross-institutional collaboration and performance. I'll give you a quick example. Let's say there's major capital improvements initiatives, maybe with a water utility that requires sort of collaboration across sectors. So, whether it be broadband infrastructure that's being built, water infrastructure is being impacted, different things that are, so when you look at measuring performance, cost avoidance, and all of those things, how do you work with other institutions who, A, may not be measuring performance the same way that you do? There's a simple communication component of that. So it's one thing to look at it within your institution, but how do you then begin to look at initiatives that cross government agencies? And usually construction and capital improvements initiatives are classic examples of that. And that's to anyone on the panel.
Who wants to tackle that one? Theresa, great.
So it's a fantastic question, and it's something that we've been working on over the last 4 years when we identified the mayor's strategic plan that had 5 objectives and 21 goals. Many of those goals were community goals. They were things like increase educational attainment across the community, increase jobs, increase wages, serve our population better in health and in all areas. And those are things that inherently are not just confined within the walls of city government. Those are things where we need to involve our school system, our higher education, our parents. They're things where we need to involve different members across the community. And so to your specific question around the utilities groups, we are starting to pull together and had a group that had met frequently in the past, and they've reconvened those meetings now to start to say, well, what is it that success means for us as a community when it comes to these sort of public works infrastructure programs and projects, and how do we make sure that we're not creating rework for ourselves or redundancy when you go and paint bike lines on a road in one street, and then the next day the water company comes in and tears that up to fix the pipes, right? How do we prevent that from happening? And a lot of times it's just communication amongst those groups that wasn't happening previously. But we also have started to pull our community partners together annually. And we probably need to do it more frequently, but at least we started with our annual strategic planning retreat, which happens in August. And we invite in all of the community partners who have a role to play with supporting some of the goals that we've identified in that plan. And we've been using the collective impact framework to help us push that work forward. So we start with a shared measurement, right? What does success look like, a common understanding of success for us, and can we all get behind that? And we have to be clear on how we're going to measure that and be supportive of that effort, and that, yes, we commit to this is the goal that we're trying to accomplish. And then there are going to be a number of different initiatives and activities that are going to happen in support of that from the different agencies. But we want those activities to be mutually reinforcing, not redundant, and not working crossways against one another. We had a great example of that with our dual diagnosis cross-functional team, which is something that we pulled together to help support a population in our community that has both mental illness and substance abuse. And they were the high utilizers of our EMS service, of our hospitals, of our detox centers, and especially of our jail. And a lot of those folks were coming through the jail on a recurring basis and detoxing in the jail, which is not the best location for them to detox, right? It's a high cost. I mean, they get great service for the time that they're there, but it's a high cost to the community, and then they are put back on the street without the support and the true detoxing and rehabilitation that they need. And so we pulled a team together to figure out what the true need was within the community. And that team involved folks who had been both on the substance abuse side of the issue and the mental illness side. And if you know anything about this, those folks are inherently at odds when it comes to state budget and trying to get resources and dollars. And so to have them in the room together to talk about the impact on the community and the need, and to start to work together has been truly transformational, I think, for that group. And the effort resulted in a lot of great initiatives that they've been pushing, including joint lobbying at the state for more money and resources for the city around this dual diagnosis population. And it's brought a lot of national grants and foundations to the table. And that is a group that did not want to disband, and they have continued on now for over a year and are moving to a coordinated care network of support across the community where they're sharing information on patients who are coming through the doors and making sure that they're getting to the best care within the community. And so I think, having that collective impact mindset and pulling the right players together and just opening that dialogue is one way to start to address the question that you had.
Okay, good. Thank you. We have time for one last question. All of our questions are coming from this part of the room. There's people all over now.
So my name is Lynda Damaris. I'm from the city of Covington, Kentucky, just north here in the state, right across the river from Cincinnati. My title is Operations Director. To give you a little background, I'm an IT professional, about 30 years experience, 15 in for-profit, 15 in nonprofit, and I'm celebrating my first year in government in 2 weeks. So, government is different. Wow. So here's my question. I am tasked with being the IT director, the performance and management and data director, the procurement officer, the vendor and compliance officer. That's a lot to try to do in one city. And I want to bring these ideas and I want to get us going, but we are a city of 41,000 residents. We have downsized our staff from about 360 to 320. Our managers are overworked. How do I get them to buy in? This is just another thing for them to do.
All right. Who wants to tackle that one?
I guess I would start by saying, that is one of the challenges, I think, whenever you're looking at a new initiative, is that it's considered a fad. And what's the value add really for the employees in that perspective? With Results Washington, we've tried to be really clear that this isn't something, crazy new and slick. This is work that they've been building on for years and years and years. All of us have been back in the quality circles and the TQM and balanced scorecard eras. Those are all pieces that are coming forward and we're saying what worked from that and what doesn't work. And that's how we're taking the next step in this transition. It's continuous improvement of continuous improvement, which sometimes it feels like that's seen as a fad, and yet it's the reality of where we want to go with continuous improvement. So that would be one thing that I would add. The other piece I would say is that, starting with employees doing the work and having them show, it goes back to kind of that model area. Let them sell it. Let them talk about, the work that they did. We often would start an event where we would look at a value stream mapping activity, and the employees on day 1 or 2 were sort of, I'm not sure this is for me, I'm not seeing the value add. By the end of the week, they see the value add, and it might be something as simple as my current process is crazy messy, and I can't believe I have to do all this work. How do I rid the waste in that? What do I get rid of, and what do I keep based on customer value? And then looking at my current state that you do at the end of the session, and you see the clarity. you have people say, this is why I get a headache when I come in every Monday, and this is the new way forward. So they actually see the value in terms of them identifying the waste and the things that aren't really adding any value and getting rid of it. What's unfortunate is we have people who say they've been within state government for 20-some years, and they've never been asked how to improve things. And so by just opening that door and getting some of the discussion going and the concepts we've talked about where, fail fast if you can, and we're trying different experiments, that's the direction I would go.
Okay, good. I know Adele, you picked up your mic.
Yeah,
Theresa?
first of all, you're not alone. Almost all of us here probably wear 10, 20 hats, and you are expected to drop everything if there's a brand new pet project or if there's a brand new initiative. But sometimes I think you need to figure out how to strike that right balance between keeping things going and advancing some good ideas. Don't fall in the trap of accepting all these distractions and wallow in that valley of despair because you'll join some other folks who weren't able to get out of that. One of my favorite sayings is, I'm not sure if I'm going to get this right, but on the path to the future, each progressive spirit is opposed by 1,000 appointed to guard the gates of the past. Now, unfortunately, it was Napoleon who said that. But it is very true in government. Each really progressive spirit, there's for every great idea, there are 500 lined up to tell you why that's not going to work and why you're wasting your time. But you know what? You just got to give it the good old fight. I liked a lot of the comments here that were said. Really tap into the rank and file. I get the best ideas out of my open door. Folks can just walk in. Anybody could walk in. I get the best ideas out of really kind of listening to them and figuring out how I can help them advance some of those ideas. Tap into that energy. I know you're probably surrounded by a lot of bosses who have different agendas and sometimes competing agendas. Be that lone voice, who's sort of just trying to convene and facilitate a different conversation. And at some point, there's going to be some positive peer pressure, and people are going to get on board. You don't need all of them. You just need the right ones to get on board. So keep at it.
All right, great advice. You're not alone, and that's what this conference, I think, is all about. So, Theresa, Wendy, Lynda, Adele, thank you very much. Let's give them a big hand.